Is that better?
We're empowering youth, but we found ourselves sort of drifting more directly into our specific topic, which had kind of a different challenge than most of the other topics, in that we were working with Harambe Farms. And we were working with, yes, she's right there, Dr. Ray. And we were working with Gator Rivers very directly. Yeah, give her a hand. She's So in working with Harambe Farms, youth was certainly a crucial element, but we found that the farm itself kind of became the focus of our work. So if we can get the next slide here. Okay, yeah. We began, as everybody else did, with a tour of the community, and it was a little disorienting at first. We were dropped off, and we showed up at an empty lot of land, and we didn't know what was going on. But very quickly, we found that there was just this incredible spark of energy that we couldn't help smiling while we were standing there and listening to these amazing people share their stories. So from this patch of land, which we eventually found out was the community garden of Waters Avenue, we were learning about the way that they had begun farming. So here we have a picture of kind of our four main players. We have Dr. McLean, and she's right there. And they worked with us very directly in describing the process. What initially might appear to be very simple, just putting seeds in the ground and watering them and turning them into food, eventually became very complex as we started to kind of elaborate on how these things happen. So that's where, as designers, we started to get things down on paper, and we were looking at three basically different components of that organization. So the first we looked at was the who, and organizing that sort of personnel as they described it to us. So we were taking something that was sort of very abstract to us and sort of very new, and turning it into something that we were familiar with, something very tangible in terms of design systems. So the first sort of component was the who, and how to organize that personnel. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. But the second component was the how, and how those elements work together. So not only the people, but the resources, and the time, and the benefits, and the produce itself. So we looked at that as a means of input and output, and how the relationships between those were created. So then from there, we were looking at the what, and determining that cycle of participation. The day-to-day operations, what happens in the winter, what happens in the spring, and how those components are related to each other. And as we started to kind of outline these elements, we were starting to see gaps, and we were starting to see sort of the cracks in the system, and where they really did need our help. Because it's such a limited time frame, we know we can't do it all. But we were able to identify those immediate needs and how we could address those with design. So the three sort of systems that we looked at from there, and the areas that we could address were the funding, and then we had our systems, which kind of was elaborated upon with those three graphs. But the third component was something that we were probably most familiar with and most kind of experienced in, and that is communications. And how, even if you have something that's successful, the only way that it can truly make a difference is if people participate. So how to take this amazing thing, this amazing garden that none of us knew about prior to this experience, and how to relate that not only to the Waters Avenue residents, but to the Semantic community, and to garner that outside support. So first we're going to talk about funding.
So with funding, what we did is we asked them what were their main source of how would they fund the farm, and it was grants. But we thought that maybe we can come up with something a little bit more creative, a little bit more something else that wasn't grants. So we listed some of these, which was social enterprise, donations, sponsorships, fundraisers. So for example, for social enterprises, we came up with some ideas of like having promotional items like tote bags, or having a little cookbook, since they're growing crops, having a little cookbook on how to prepare these crops in these delicious dishes, having in the garden, since it's such a beautiful garden, having any gym classes there, some yoga classes, some basketball classes, and all that. And then obviously with donations, we could get donations. Another idea was having a truck, where the truck, they would load all the vegetables in there, and then they would go through the community selling those vegetables. Instead of having an ice cream truck, they would have a vegetable truck and go through the entire community selling all those things. Obviously, sponsorships and fundraisers. Again, with fundraisers, having Gator playing a basketball game and going and visiting there, having events in the farm and all that. So just having all these things that would bring them income and that would incorporate the community to participate in it and to be a part of it as well, not just through grants. And our next one was systems.
So once we were looking at, all these great advertising perks and all these opportunities to improve, we realized that there's a system, there's a flow that needs to be looked at. And looking at a year-round urban farming community, trying to figure out each individual aspect of it was just absurd, the scale of it. So we kept going back to us kind of talking about stories, and we wanted to figure out a way that something that we can give them so that once these 3 days are over, they're able to take this and be able to work with the different systems and the different complicated situations that they're going to be coming up to every moment, in the year. So we started looking at, building scenarios and kind of storyboarding. So what we did is we ended up building a file that allowed you to have a breakdown what this kind of a story or scenario would be. So allowing you to kind of take a situation, for example, of a truck breaking down to be able to bring fertilizer and whatnot back to the farm, and analyzing the different issues. So that setting the stage, the truck is broken down. The obstacle at this point is financially they might not be able to have the funds to be able to fix the truck. So being able to see, is there a barter system, but then ultimately giving him the option of possibly advertising in the farm itself. Through that, people are able to come and he gets exposure through that. And then ultimately, the people come back to him because he was the sponsoring one. Which is one basic example that we decided to show so we could basically simply draw out an image and then be able to take key findings out of it. So, from this system, it shows you like the truck breaking down, obviously there needs to be maintenance and that needs to be remembered. Through the barter system, we need to find new assets. Through the advertising, we need to know, who's able to produce these advertisements graphically, where are they going to be, in what location, and then ultimately with the people coming, that they need exposure, that they need people to be involved in the community. So through this, we built a blank template basically that allows them to take this for any situation that comes up, and they're able to analyze it, break it down, so they're able to find the who, what's, where's, and when's, and why's of the situation, be able to resolve it themselves, and be self-sustainable. So going on from the systems, we move to communications.
We divided up communications into 3 main components, which were recruitment, awareness, and education. In recruitment, we realized that what the garden really needs is volunteers. And in order to get volunteers, you need to make the space, have the people be aware of the space. So we needed to have signage, and we needed to have flyers and brochures and pamphlets. Also, we needed to educate people who are going there. So we needed to have cooking classes, teach them about tradition and about wellness and health, and helping the intergenerational community work together. We proposed a sign for the community. Here you can see the lot before there was awareness of what that garden was. And here it is with awareness. So everyone can see what that place is and when they can go there. Here we have a house without the basic community element in it. And here it has a little community element. And now people walking by can know that the person from that house goes to the garden, they plant, they harvest, they're a part of, like an active member of the community. Gator Rivers.
So one of the other things that we kind of wanted to touch on in terms of youth, and kind of relating this back to the D0-ference theme, was that one of the most unique assets that this program has to offer is the jobs that it creates for the community. And even though they have kind of that workforce and they're working with these graduates of the Harambe House program, it's a really amazing system where they're learning how to farm the land and kind of gaining these crucial skills. We wanted to be able to offer them something to get them started and to be able to find other ways of funding so they can pay for those employees, they can be paying for equipment, and all these expenses that they're eventually going to accrue. So from there, we really started to get to work, and all of this kind of shared enthusiasm and this exchange of dialogue between the community and between our community leaders. Gator was in there with us every day, Deborah was in there with us every day, and all of that dialogue turned into this huge amount of momentum. So we were bringing projects home with us and kind of thinking about it all the time. So we were actually able to produce actual pieces that can kind of get the ball rolling. So we just wanted to show you guys and share these kind of items with you. And because it is design ethos and we really are trying to be sustainable, we were able to repurpose some of these items. We finally found a good use for one of these. So beyond the signage that we had proposed, we were able to develop a series of stencils that they can apply these to any surface. They can apply them to building walls, to crates like we have here, so they can package the actual produce that they'll be growing. And then these stencils can also be used as additional signage. So we also created a sticker system. We're all wearing them today. But those can be used to wrap the produce and to seal them, but also as a means of identifying them on kind of print materials. There it is. All of the material that we've kind of collected and researched and all the dialogue and conversations that we had, we were able to record and then put in these binders for you guys. We also had the digital files, so we were able to show those to people at Paragon and Right Space, so you can really continue this process and hopefully gain some funding through the actual documentation and evidence of all the research that we've done.
Yes.